Chapter 19. Thomas Robinson reached around, ran his fingers under his left arm, and lifted it. He guided his arm to the Bible, and his rubber-like left hand sought contact with the black binding. As he raised his right hand, the useless one slipped off the Bible and hit the clerk's table. He was trying again when Judge Taylor groaned. "That'll do, Tom." Tom took the oath and stepped into the witness chair. Atticus very quickly induced him to tell us. Tom was 25 years of age. He was married with 3 children. He had been in trouble with the law before. He once received 30 days for disorderly conduct. "It must have been disorderly," said Atticus. "What did it consist of?" "Got in a fight with another man. He tried to cut me." "Did he succeed?" "Yes, sir, a little. Not enough to hurt. You see, Tom moved his left shoulder. "Yes," said Atticus. "You were both convicted." "Yes, sir. I had to serve because I couldn't pay the fine. Other fellow paid his." Dill leaned across me and asked Jem what Atticus was doing. Jem said Atticus was showing the jury that Tom had nothing to hide. "Were you acquainted with Mayella Violet Ewell?" asked Atticus. "Yes, sir. I had to pass her place going to and from the field every day." "Whose field?" "I pick for Mr. Link D's." "Were you picking cotton in November?" "No, sir. I works in his yard fall and winter time. I works pretty steady for him all year round. He's got a lot of pecan trees and things." "You say you had to pass the Ewell place to get to and from work. Is there any other way to go?" "No, sir, none's a know of." "Tom, did she ever speak to you?" "Why, yes, sir. I'd tip my hat when I go by, and one day she asked me to come inside the fence and bust up a chifferobe for her." "When did she ask you to chop up the chifferobe?" "Mr. Finch, it was way last spring. I remember it because it was chopping time and I had my hoe with me. I said I didn't have nothing but this hoe, but she said she had a hatchet. She give me the hatchet, and I broke up the chifferobe. She said, 'I reckon I'll have to give you a nickel, won't I?' And I said, 'No, ma'am, there ain't no charge.' Then I went home. Mr. Finch, that was way last spring, way over a year ago." "Did you ever go on the place again?" "Yes, sir." "When?" "Well, I went lots of times." Judge Taylor instinctively reached for his gavel, but let his hand fall. The murmur below us died without his help. "Under what circumstances?" "Please, sir?" "Why did you go inside the fence lots of times?" Tom Robinson's forehead relaxed. "She'd call me in, sir. Seemed like every time I passed by yonder she'd have something little for me to do. Chopping, kindling, toting water for her. She watered them red flowers every day." "Were you paid for your services?" "No, sir. Not after she offered me a nickel the first time. I was glad to do it. Mr. Ewell didn't seem to help her none, and neither did the chillun, and I know she didn't have no nickels to spare." "Where were the other children?" "They was always around, all over the place. They'd watch me work, some of 'em set in the window." "Would Miss Mayella talk to you?" "Yes, sir. She talked to me." As Tom Robinson gave his testimony, it came to me that Mayella Ewell must have been the loneliest person in the world. She was even lonelier than Boo Radley, who has not been out of the house in 25 years. When Atticus asked had she any friends, she seemed to not know what he meant. Then she thought he was making fun of her. She was as sad, I thought, as what Jem called a mixed child. White people wouldn't have anything to do with her because she lived among pigs, and Negroes wouldn't have anything to do with her because she was white. She couldn't live like Mr. Dolphus Raymond, who preferred the company of Negroes because she didn't own a riverbank, and she wasn't from a fine old family. Nobody said that's just their way about the Ewells. Maycomb gave them Christmas baskets, welfare money, and the back of its hand. Tom Robinson was probably the only person who was ever decent to her, but she said he took advantage of her, and when she stood up, she looked at him as if he were dirt beneath her feet. "Did you ever," Atticus interrupted my meditations, "at any time go on the Ewell property? Did you ever set foot on the Ewell property without an express invitation from one of them?" "No, sir, Mr. Finch, I never did. I wouldn't do that, sir." Atticus sometimes said that one way to tell whether a witness was lying or telling the truth was to listen rather than watch. I applied this test. Tom denied it 3 times in one breath, but quietly, with no hint of whining in his voice, and I found myself believing him in spite of his protesting too much. He seemed to be a respectable Negro, and respectable Negroes would never go up into somebody's yard of his own volition. "Tom, what happened to you on the evening of November 21st of last year?" Below us, the spectators drew a collective breath and leaned forward. Behind us, the Negroes did the same. Tom was a black velvet Negro, not shiny, but soft black velvet. The whites of his eyes shone on his face, and when he spoke, we saw flashes of his teeth. If he had been whole, he would have been a fine specimen of a man. "Mr. Finch," he said, "I was going home as usual that evening, and when I passed the Ewell place, Miss Mayella were on the porch like she said she were. It seemed real quiet like, and I didn't quite know why. I was studying why, just passing by, when she says for me to come there and help her a minute. Well, I went inside the fence and looked around for some kindling to work on, but I didn't see none. And she says, nah, I got something for you to do in the house. The old door's off its hinges and falls a-coming on pretty fast. I said, you got a screwdriver, Miss Mayella? She said she sure had. Well, I went up the steps and she motioned me to come inside, and I went in the front room and looked at the door. I said, Miss Mayella, this door looks all right. I pulled it back and forth, and those hinges was all right. Then she shut the door in my face. Mr. Finch, I was wondering why it was so quiet-like, and it come to me that there wasn't a child on the place, not a one of 'em, and I said, Miss Mayella, where the chillun? Tom's black velvet skin had begun to shine, and he ran his hand over his face. I said, where the chillun, he continued, and she says she was sort of laughing, sort of. She says they all gone to town to get ice creams. She said took me a slap year to save 7 nickels, but I done it. They gone to town. Tom's discomfort was not from the humidity. What did you say then, Tom? Asked Atticus. I said something like, why, Miss Mayella, that's right smart of you to treat him. And she said, you think so? I don't think she understood what I was thinking. I meant it was smart of her to save like that, and nice of her to treat him. I understood you, Tom. Go on, said Atticus. Well, I said I'd best be going. I couldn't do nothing for her. And she says, oh, yes, I could. And I asked her what, and she says, just step up on that chair yonder and get that box down from on top of the shift robe. Not the same shift robe you busted up? Asked Atticus. The witness smiled. Nah, sir, another one, most as tall as the room. So I done what she told me, and I just reached, when the next thing I know, she grabbed me round the legs. Grabbed me round the legs, Mr. Finch. She scared me so bad I hopped down and turned the chair over. That was the only thing, the only furniture disturbed in that room, Mr. Finch, when I left it, I swear before God. What happened after you turned the chair over? Tom Robinson had come to a dead stop. He glanced up at Atticus, then at the jury, then at Mr. Underwood, sitting across the room. Tom, you're sworn to tell the whole truth. Will you tell it? Tom ran his hand nervously over his mouth. What happened after that? Answer the question, said Judge Taylor. 1/3 of his cigar had vanished. Mr. Finch, I got down off of that chair and turned around, and she sort of jumped on me. Jumped on you? Violently? No, sir. She hugged me. She hugged me round the waist. This time Judge Taylor's gavel came down with a bang, and as it did, the overhead lights went on in the courtroom. Darkness had not come, but the afternoon sun had left the windows. Judge Taylor quickly restored order. Then what did she do? The witness swallowed hard. She reached up and kissed me side of the face. She says she never kissed a grown man before, and she might as well kiss a nigger. She says what her papa do to her don't count. She says, kiss me back, nigger. I say, Miss Mayella, let me out of here, and I tried to run, but she got her back to the door, and I'd have had to push her. I didn't want to harm her, Mr. Finch, and I said, let me pass. But just when I say it, Mr. Yule yonder hollered through the window. What did he say? Tom Robinson swallowed again, and his eyes widened. Something not fittin' to say, not fittin' for these folks in chillin' to hear. What did he say, Tom? You must tell the jury what he said. Tom Robinson shut his eyes tight. He says, you goddamn whore, I'll kill ya. Then what happened? Mr. Finch, I was running so fast I didn't know what happened. Tom, did you rape Mayella Yule? I did not, sir. Did you harm her in any way? I did not, sir. Did you resist her advances? Mr. Finch, I tried. I tried to without being ugly to her. I didn't want to be ugly. I didn't want to push her or nothing. It occurred to me that in their own way, Tom Robinson's manners were as good as Atticus's. Until my father explained it to me later, I didn't understand the subtlety of Tom's predicament. He would not have dared strike a white woman under any circumstances and expect to live long. So he took the first opportunity to run, a sure sign of guilt. Tom, go back once more to Mr. Yule, said Atticus. Did he say anything to you? Not anything, sir. He might have said something, but I weren't there. That'll do, Atticus cut in sharply. What did you hear? Who was he talking to? Mr. Finch, he were talking and looking at Miss Mayella. Then you ran? I sure did, sir. Why did you run? I was scared, sir. Why were you scared? Mr. Finch, if you was a nigger like me, you'd be scared too.